Good morning, friends. Today we are going to discuss one of the very important topic related to CSIR NET examination, and this is the first topic which refers to molecular interactions relevant to biology. Now when we talk about the molecular interactions, it mainly refers to those interactions which are generally found in the different biomolecules. For example, if we talk about the protein, we have different kind of interactions which we can observe. This includes covalent as well as the non-covalent interaction. If we talk about the primary structure of the protein, then we have the peptide bonds. If we talk about the secondary structure of the proteins, then we have the hydrogen bonds. If we talk about the tertiary structure of the proteins, then we have ionic bond, and in the quaternary structure we also have the covalent bond. Similarly, in the DNA we have the hydrogen bond and covalent bond in the form of phosphodiester linkages. So all these molecular interactions are very important, and it is important to understand them, that how this different interaction will hold all these different molecules together, and what are the different kind of linkages and functional groups which are involved in this. Now let us go to the first slide. As far as the structure of atoms and the molecules is concerned, the chemical bond can be divided into two different categories. One is the non-covalent interaction and second is the covalent interaction. Now, depending upon the strength of binding, the non-covalent interaction are further divided into van der Waals interaction, ionic interactions and hydrogen bonds, while the covalent interactions are nothing but the interactions which are being formed due to the sharing of the electrons. Now if we look at this figure, we can see that when we move from van der Waals interaction to the covalent interaction, there is an increase in the bond energy. What it indicates? It indicates that the covalent bond is toughest to break because it has very high bond energy, that is 240 kilocalorie per mole. If you talk about the DNA, if you talk about the protein, in the protein disulfide bond, which is the covalent bond, it is very difficult to break. If we talk about the DNA, the phosphodiester backbone is difficult to break. However, the hydrogen bond, ionic bond and van der Waals bond, they require even lesser energy to break them. Even the thermal energy can break these bonds. Now let us look at what are these different types of interactions. First one is the ionic interactions, and it refers to that these are those interactions which occur between the cations and anions, that is the positively charged and the negatively charged atoms of a molecule. And here the strength of the interaction, it depends on the distance of the separation, that is R, and the dielectric constant. What is dielectric constant? The dielectric constant is the measure of the polarity of the compound, because the degree of ionization of the compound, it will depend upon what is the polarity of that compound, how much it is soluble in the water. Because once it will be solubilized in the water, it will ionize and form the ions, and these ions will lead to the formation of the ionic interaction or the ionic bond. For example, if the atom accepts the electrons, it will generate negative charge on it, and if it will lose the electron, it will generate positive charge on it. So that's why if two opposite atoms will come into the vicinity, they will form the ionic bond. It means the bond between the charged atoms. Here the example has been given of sodium chloride, where the sodium is the positively charged ion and chloride is the negatively charged ion, and they both will combine to form the ionic bond. So when the bond formation takes place between two oppositely charged species or the ions or the atoms, then it is known as ionic interaction. The second one is the hydrogen bond. Hydrogen bond are again a non-covalent bond. I have given you the example of the secondary structure of the protein, for example alpha helix structure or the beta pleated sheets, or the base pairing which is taking place between two opposite strands of the DNA. For example, we know that in the DNA strand, two hydrogen bonds are present between the adenine and thymine, and three hydrogen bonds are present between guanosine and cytosine. So what are these hydrogen bonds? These hydrogen bonds, they are non-covalent interactions which are occurring between the hydrogen atom of a dipolar molecule. Now what do we mean by dipolar molecule? Di means two. It means the molecules have two different poles. It has two different electronegativity. For example, if we talk about the water, the oxygen has a higher electronegativity than the hydrogen atom. So the pair of the electron will be more towards the oxygen than that of the hydrogen, and because of this reason the oxygen is partially negatively charged as compared to the hydrogen atom, and that's why it is generating two different opposite poles, and that's why it is known as dipolar molecule. The examples are given. For example, water and the unshared electron pair of the another atom, that is oxygen or nitrogen. So here we can say that hydrogen bond are formed between the hydrogen atom and the unshared electron pair of another atom, for example oxygen or nitrogen. Generally regarding the hydrogen bond there is a confusion that the hydrogen bonds takes place between the two hydrogen atom, but that is not the correct phenomena. The correct hydrogen bond formation takes place between the hydrogen atom and the unshared electron pair of the another atom, especially oxygen or nitrogen. Now here in the hydrogen bond, the strength of binding depends on the proper alignment of the interacting atoms. It means that in order to form the hydrogen bond, the two different atoms must come at the bond forming distance, and they should be in the proper alignment, and then only the interaction of the atoms takes place and the hydrogen bond formation takes place. As far as the hydrogen bond formation is concerned, the strength depends upon the proper alignment as well as the number of hydrogen bonds present in the molecule. For example, if we talk about the DNA which is having the composition having more number of AT base pairs which are having only two hydrogen bond, it is more susceptible to the temperature than the DNA molecule having higher number or higher proportion of the GC base pairs, that is the guanine and cytosine base pairs, which has three hydrogen bonds. So as a result, the DNA molecule which is having more number of GC base pairs, which will be having more total number of hydrogen bonds, and that's why it will be less susceptible to the temperature, and it will show more thermostability than the DNA molecule which is having more AT base pairs having only two hydrogen bonds. So the strength of the hydrogen bonds, it will depends on the proper alignment of the interacting atoms as well as the how many number of hydrogen bonds are present in the molecule. More the number of hydrogen bond, greater will be the stability of that molecule. Some examples has been given over here. For example, water, alcohol interaction, amine water interaction, peptide water interaction, and ester water interaction. These are the few examples of the hydrogen bond. The next is the van der Waals interaction. Van der Waals interaction are the bonds which are formed between the fluctuating induced dipole within the electron clouds of interacting molecules. In the atom, if the electrons are constantly moving, it may possible that this constantly moving electron will just touch each other during their movement and they will form some kind of interaction. And this kind of interaction is known as van der Waals interaction. So here, these bonds can occur between the non-polar or polar molecules. It is not necessary that it will form only in the polar molecule. But if we talk about the ionic bond, it will depend upon the dielectric constant and it is formed between the polar molecules because only the polar molecules can undergo ionization and generate the cations and anions which can form the bond. But here in this case, especially in case of the van der Waals interaction, the bond can formed between the non-polar or the polar molecules. Now, the van der Waals bonds, they are extremely dependent on the distance of the separation between the molecules. It means that the bond forming distance of the van der Waals interaction are very less as compared to that of the other type of molecular interactions. Here it has been observed that the distance of the separation between the molecules are the significant only when the electron clouds of the molecule are just touching, because the electron cloud of two different molecules must come into their vicinity so that they can touch to each other and they can form the van der Waals interaction. Covalent interaction. This is the interaction which has the highest bond energy and it is the most difficult bond to break. For example, suppose you want to start a company and suppose if you are looking for some partner who is investing 50% of the money and you are also investing the 50% of the money, then the probability of running out of the business will be very less because both the partner have invested equal amount of money. Similarly, in the covalent interaction also there is a sharing of the electron. 50% electron will be shared by one atom and 50% of the electron will be shared by another atom, and this is how the covalent bond formation takes place. If you recall the first slide where we have discussed about the bond energy, you must have noticed that the covalent bond has very high energy. It has 240 kilocalorie per mole of energy. It means if you want to break this bond, you have to give some energy, not the thermal energy, but the energy which can break the covalent bond. For example, the disulfide bond in the protein, the phosphodiester bond in the DNA, as well as the phosphoester bond which is found in the adenosine triphosphate. They all are the example of the covalent bond. Now, as far as the biomolecules are concerned, when these covalent bonds are being broken, there is a liberation of the energy, and that energy can be harnessed in the form of any different type of high energy compounds, and they may be utilized to generate the energy for the cell. So this is a very brief idea regarding the covalent interactions. Now let us see what are the covalent interaction. How the covalent interaction takes place, that has been shown in this animation. You can see that in this animation, two different atoms, they are sharing the electron and forming the covalent bond. So here it has been mentioned that the covalent interaction is formed between the non-metallic element of the similar electronegativity. Then only they can share the electrons. So that's why the covalent interactions, they are formed by sharing the electrons pairs. They are stable, non-ionizing particles and they are not conductor at any state. For example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, C2H6, that is ethane, water, SiC, that is silicon carbonate, they all are the example of the covalent interaction. As I have told you earlier, there are many instances in biological system where the covalent interactions are being formed, and where these covalent interactions are broken down, it will result into the energy generation, and that energy may be harnessed into the high energy compound like ATP. So these interactions are very important as far as the biomolecules are concerned, and you have to put the energy from the outside in order to break these interactions. Another very important phenomena which is observed in the biomolecule is the hydrophobic effect. Now let us understand this by considering the example of the proteins. We know that proteins, they are made up of different type of amino acids, and these amino acids has different type of side chain. Now depending upon the polarity, we can divide them into the polar side chain and non-polar side chain. And whatever the non-polar side chains are there, they will come together in the protein and they will form entropy driven aggregation. And this aggregation takes place, as we have discussed earlier, that this entropy driven aggregation takes place between the non-polar molecules in the aqueous solution. Because since these are the non-polar side chain, they do not have any affinity towards the water molecule, they will convolute inside, and all the hydrophobic group will be present inside the protein molecule, and the polar side chains will be exposed on the surface of the protein. So when you try to prepare the aqueous solution, there will be very thin film of water which is present on the surface of the protein, and that's why we say that proteins are sparingly soluble in the water. But when you add some polar organic solvent, or when you add some salt like ammonium sulfate, which has greater affinity for the water molecule, this non-polar group will come out, they will aggregate together, and they will lead to the precipitation of the proteins. So these are not the thermodynamically driven interactions, but these are the entropy driven interactions where their objective is to stabilize the molecule by convoluting the non-polar side chains to that of the inner core of the protein, and whatever the polar side chains will be there, it will be present on the surface of the protein. So as we have discussed that the hydrophobic effect refer to the entropy driven aggregation of the non-polar molecules in the aqueous solution that occurs to minimize the ordering of water molecule with which they are in contact. This is not, again it has been very important to remember that this is not an attractive force. It is not a thermodynamically driven process, but it is an entropy driven process where it will put the molecule into the cage like structure. Okay. Now what all these molecular interactions will form? As we have discussed that these molecular linkages, these molecular interactions, they are responsible to form different kind of functional groups and linkages. For example, the different kind of functional groups are mentioned in this slide. Different kind of linkages are also mentioned in this slide. For example, the amide linkage or ester linkage or the ether linkage. So in the competitive exam, it has been observed that they will give you the example of some biomolecule and they will ask you that identify the functional group or identify the linkage which is being formed. Now, generally the linkage is formed between the functional groups. For example, if we talk about the ester linkage, the ester linkage is generally formed between the hydroxyl group as well as the carboxylic group. If we talk about the amide linkage, then it is generally formed between the carboxylic group and the amino group. So functional groups are ultimately responsible for the different kind of linkages which are taking place in the different types of biomolecule. For example, the peptide bond, for example, the glycosidic bond, for example, the disulfide bond. These all are the example of the different kind of linkages. So you must know that which kind of functional groups are involved to form which different kind of linkages. For example, if you have the aldehyde and alcoholic group, they can form the glycosidic linkage. Suppose if you have the amino group and if you have the aldehyde group, they are going to form the Schiff base. So this kind of knowledge is very much essential in order to find out that which kind of interactions are going on within the different functional groups to produce the different kind of linkages. Because ultimately these linkages are responsible to hold the biomolecule, suppose if it is a polymer, together, and they are responsible for the proper configuration of the biomolecules. Now, what is another important aspect in this topic? This mainly includes composition, structure, and the function of the biomolecules. We have discussed about the different molecular interactions. We have discussed about different bonds, different type of bonds which are responsible to form the different kind of molecular interactions on the basis of the kind of functional groups and the kind of linkages which are being produced. So what all these will form? They will mainly form the different kind of biomolecules which includes carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, nucleic acids and vitamins. So you must know that what are the physico-chemical property and what are the structural property of the carbohydrate. They may ask you the structure of some disaccharide or polysaccharide, and they can ask you which linkage is present. For example, if we talk about the lactose, you should be able to know that lactose is made up of which two different types of disaccharides. For example, if it is made up of glucose and galactose, in that case, which glycosidic linkage is present? Then you should know that alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkage is present as far as the carbohydrates are concerned. As far as the lipids are concerned, you must know that which kind of interactions are found in the lipids, what is its physico-chemical property, which kind of metabolism the lipids will undergo. For example, if we talk about the triacylglycerols or triglycerides, they are being formed between the glycerol and the fatty acid, and here there is a formation of the ester bond between the hydroxyl group of the glycerol as well as the carboxylic group of the fatty acids. So this linkage is very important as far as the lipids are concerned. You should also know that what is the different kind of metabolic pathways under which all these biomolecules will undergo and what is the net outcome of that pathway. What are the energetics of that pathway that you need to know as far as these biomolecules are concerned. The third and very important biomolecule is a protein, because it has wide variety of molecular interaction. If you look at the protein, almost all the interactions which we have studied so far, they are present. If we look at the primary structure of the protein, the peptide bond is present, which is an example of the covalent bond, and it also has partial double bond structure. If we look at the secondary structure of the protein, for example alpha helix or the parallel or anti-parallel beta pleated sheets, we have the formation of the hydrogen bond. If we talk about the tertiary structure of the protein, then we have the formation of the ionic interactions, we have the involvement of the covalent interaction, we also have in the proteins the interaction of the hydrophobic interactions between the non-polar side chains. So protein is a very important biomolecule because it encompasses all the different kind of molecular interactions, and many different questions are asked from the proteins. Not only that, there are some questions from the protein which are being asked which are on the basis of Ramachandran plot. We know that Ramachandran plot is very important in order to determine the secondary structure of the protein, and depending upon the angle between the carbon and oxygen and the carbon and nitrogen of the peptide bond, it can be having two different configuration, phi configuration and psi configuration. And you should know that which secondary structure falls into these two different configuration, that is the angle of rotation with respect to carbon oxygen and carbon nitrogen, and it is generally ranged between the minus 180 degree to plus 180 degree. They may also ask you that how many different possible proteins can be formed from the 20 different amino acids, so that theoretically you should be able to calculate. They may give the different number of amino acid and they can say that what can be the probable molecular weight of this particular protein. They may also give you the different proteins, and they can tell you that which protein will be precipitated or what will be the isoelectric point of this particular protein or the particular amino acid. So many different type of question can be asked from the protein. They may also give you the separation profile. There are different separation techniques which can be used to purify the proteins, and these separation techniques are generally depend upon the physico-chemical property of the proteins. So some data regarding this can be given to you, and you may be able to tell that whether the protein is getting separated, whether the protein is getting purified or not. So many such examples can be given where you can just calculate the specific activity, and if the specific activity is increased, you can say that the given protein is being purified. So as far as the protein are concerned, many different examples, many different calculation based questions can be asked. Now as far as the nucleic acids are concerned, in nucleic acids you must know the basic Watson and Crick model of the DNA, and what are the different parameters, what are the different physico-chemical properties related to the DNA. For example, if we talk about the B form of DNA, they may ask you that if the DNA is 2 meter long, how many number of base pairs are present in that DNA. Now we know that DNA is 2 meter long. It means we have to convert this 2 meter into the 2 nanometer, that is 2 into 10 raised to 9 nanometer. And then we know that in 3.4 nanometer of the DNA, 10 different nitrogen bases are present. So if 3.4 nanometer of DNA contain 10 nitrogen bases, 2 into 10 raised to 9 2 into 10 raised to 9 nanometer of DNA contains how many nitrogen bases. So accordingly you can calculate. Similarly, they may ask you that if you have two different types of nitrogen bases, 4 different type of nitrogen bases, A, T, C and G, and suppose you want to DNA which contains only 2 different nucleotides having 2 different base pairs, then how many different combinations are possible? So for that there is one simple formula, that is 4 raised to n, where n is equal to the number of nucleotide or number of chains of the DNA which you want to prepare. So if there are only 2, then the answer will be 4 raised to 2, that is 4 into 4 is equal to 16. So accordingly you can calculate and you can find out. We have incorporated certain model questions which we are going to discuss, and during the discussion of this model question we will calculate that how we can correlate all these physico-chemical parameter of the DNA. Another important thing regarding the nucleic acid is the Chargaff's rule. There are many questions which are being asked on the Chargaff's rule. What the Chargaff's rule states? It states that the total amount of purine present in the DNA is directly proportional to the total amount of pyrimidine which are present in the DNA. So they may give you the composition of the DNA strand and they may ask you that what may be the rest of the composition of the DNA, or they may ask you that how many number of hydrogen bonds which will be present in the given DNA molecule. So Chargaff's rule is very important as far as the nucleic acids are concerned, and as far as this first topic is concerned, there are many different questions which has been asked from the Chargaff's rule as far as the nucleic acid is concerned. The another one is the vitamins. Now majority of the vitamins here are considered those vitamins which are used as a coenzyme for various biochemical reactions. Now what are coenzymes? Coenzymes are those non-protein moiety which are present at the catalytic site of the enzyme, and it will help the enzyme to catalyze the reactions. And majority of the vitamins especially belong to the vitamin B complex. They are acting as a coenzyme for the various biochemical reactions. So you should know that which kind of coenzyme is required for which kind of biochemical reaction. If we talk about the niacin, if we talk about the flavins, they are used for the oxidation reduction reaction. If we talk about the biotin, it is used for the carboxylation reaction. If we talk about the thiamine pyrophosphate, it is used for decarboxylation reaction, as well as it is also used for the trans-aldolase and trans-ketolase type of reaction. So always you should remember that which kind of vitamin or the coenzyme is being used for which particular type of the biochemical reaction, and due to the deficiency of this vitamin, which different kind of disease may occur. So this is one of the very important topic from which few questions are being asked. Okay. Another important topic is principle of biophysical chemistry, in which you need to know that what are the buffers, how the buffers can be prepared, how the solution can be prepared, and how the pH of any particular solution can be calculated. If you may ask, if you will be asked that what will be the pH of 0.1 normal HCl, then you should be able to calculate. Not only that, if you will be asked that how will you prepare one normal solution of NaOH, you should be able to calculate. Suppose you will be asked that how will you prepare one normal HCl, you should be able to calculate. These are very few very simple examples I am giving. Another important topic in this category is Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, which correlates the pH with the pKa, that is the dissociation constant of weak acid with its strong base. So this Henderson-Hasselbalch equation is very important as far as the pI calculations are concerned, because if we talk about the proteins, it has the amino groups, it has the carboxylic group, and it has the R group, and they have certain pKa values, and from these pKa values we can calculate the pI for the particular reaction. So that's why the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation is very important, and that you should consider when you are preparing for the first topic, that is molecular interactions relevant to biology. The another important topic is the reaction kinetics. It means what is the order of reaction. For example, the reaction which has been given is the first order reaction, second order reaction, it is a mixed order reaction, it is a zero order reaction. They may ask you that if the reaction substrate A is getting converted into the product B, and the formation of the B is directly proportional to the concentration of A, then what will be the type of the reaction the substrate A is undergoing? Then you can say that since the velocity or the rate of the reaction is directly proportional to the concentration of only one reactant, then we can say it is a first order reaction, it is a first order kinetics, and the rate here is known as the rate constant here is known as the first order rate constant. So this is a very simple example. When we will discuss the questions, we are going to discuss this in little bit detail. Or they may ask you that there are two different reactants which are involved and they are forming the product B. Now if I double the concentration of both A and B, there is an overall increase of rate of reaction, that is 8 times. Then what will be the relation between the rate of the reaction as well as these two reactants? So these kind of questions can be asked. We know that the rate of the reaction can be measured either by measuring the decreasing reactant concentration per unit time or by measuring the increasing product concentration per unit time. But as far as the rate of the reaction is concerned, the rate of the reaction can be measured by considering both the concentration of the reactants. It may be possible that in your reaction system you have two different reactants, but the rate of reaction depends only upon the concentration of one reactant. So in that case also you will have the first order reaction. And if the reaction is in both the direction, that is in the forward direction as well as in the backward direction, then there is a involvement of the equilibrium constant, and that is KEQ. So you should know that how to calculate the equilibrium constant for that particular reaction. Not only that, but there are certain examples related to the free energy concept can also be asked as far as the reaction kinetics are concerned. Now let us discuss some of the model questions which have been asked in this in the different competitive examination. The first question is that which non-covalent bond is responsible for the high melting and boiling point of water. Now 4 different options are given over here. A, hydrogen bond; B, van der Waals force; C, hydrophobic force; and D, covalent bond. Now if we look at the covalent bond, if you recall the first slide, covalent bond is a very high energy bond and it cannot be disrupted by the thermal energy. However, the rest 3 bonds, hydrogen bond, van der Waals force and the hydrophobic force, they can be destroyed by the thermal energy. So that's why the D can be ruled out and the possibility is either A, B or C. Now as far as the B and C are concerned, they are weaker bond than the hydrogen bond. So that's why if covalent bonds are intact, the boiling point of the water will be increased only due to the presence of the hydrogen bond, because when you start boiling the water initially, the van der Waals force and hydrophobic force will be disrupted. So out of these 3, the hydrogen bond will be last for the longer period of time within the water. So that's why the water will undergo evaporation when the hydrogen bond will be broken down. So that's why the correct answer is A, that is the hydrogen bond, because the hydrogen bond will ultimately decide the stability of the water upon boiling, and this is the bond which will be broken at the higher temperature as compared to van der Waals force and the hydrophobic force. And as far as we have discussed, the covalent bond are concerned, they cannot be broken down by simple putting the thermal energy. So the correct answer is the hydrogen bond. Okay. The second model question, and that is the principle, which of the following is an ester? Now 4 different options are given: CH3, CH2, CH2, COCH3, CH3, CH2, CH2, CONH2, CH3, CH2, CH2, COOCH3, and CH3, CH2, CH2, COOH. 4 different options are given. Now, if you look at the first option A, as we have discussed earlier, that the ester bond formation takes place between the hydroxyl group as well as the carboxylic group. So in option A, there is a carboxylic group, but there is no hydroxyl group which is being involved. So option A is not at all correct, because it is a carbonyl group and the CH3 group, that is the keto group and the CH3 group, which is being involved in the bond formation. If we look at the option B, then here there is a CONH2. It means there is a amide linkage. It is not a ester linkage, it is a amide linkage which is taking place between the carboxyl group and the NH3+. If you look at the option C, then there is a probability that it may be a ester bond, because here this ester bond may be formed between the carboxylic group of the propionic acid and the methanol, that is CH3OH. So there is a formation of ester linkage between the carboxylic group of the propionic acid and the hydroxyl group of the methanol. So that's why the correct option may be C. Let us look at one more, option D, which has been given over here, that is CH3, CH2, CH2, COOH. Now here there is no linkage which is being formed. This is just the propionic acid which has been mentioned. So this is generally the COOH carboxylic group only. There is no linkage which has been shown, any kind of linkage which has been shown in option number D. So the correct option is C. So that's why your answer here will be C. The correct answer is C, where the ester linkage is taking place between the carboxylic group of the propionic acid and the methanol, hydroxyl group of the methanol, and here there is a formation of the ester linkage. Okay, now let us look at this figure carefully. This figure is of triacyl glycerol. Now here glycerol is attached with 2 different fatty acids and the phosphate, and this phosphate is again attached with the alcohol. Now look at the 2 different arrows which has been shown in this figure, that is arrow A and arrow B. What these 2 different arrows indicate? Which kind of linkage these 2 arrows indicate? Now here glycerol, it is having the hydroxyl group, and fatty acids, they are also having the carboxylic group. So the first linkage A is between the carboxylic group of the fatty acid and the hydroxyl group of the glycerol, and it is a ester linkage. So it is true that A is ester linkage. So that's why option A, B or D may be correct, since option C has indicated that A is a ether linkage. So C option is ruled out totally. So the possibility is between the A, B and D. Now if you look at the linkage B is not a ether, because it is taking place between the keto group and the hydroxyl group, which has not been shown over here. The amide linkage takes place between the acid and the ammonia. So here there is no ammonia. Phosphoric acid is there, but it is attached to the hydroxyl group of the alcohol. And third option is the phosphoester bond. Why? Because the phosphoric acid here it is not a carboxylic group, but here it is a phosphoric acid which is forming the linkage with the hydroxyl group of the alcohol. So that's why the option D, that is the A is the ester linkage and B is the phosphoester linkage, is correct. So as we have discussed earlier that there are different functional groups which are involved in the formation of the different kind of linkage. So here the phosphate group as well as the hydroxyl group of the alcohol are involved. And remember that all these ester linkage, amide linkage, ether linkage, they all are the example of the covalent linkages, or they are the example of the covalent bonds. Let us look at the structure of the carbohydrate which is given in this figure. The molecular structure which has been shown in the above figure is of glucose. The question is that molecular structure of glucose is given in the above figure and identify the incorrect statement. 4 different options are given. Option A, that it is the L form of glucose. Option B, it is an aldose. Option C, it contains 4 chiral carbons. And option D, it gives 20 different stereoisomers. Now in order to understand this question and in order to find out the answer to this question, let us go to the TallyTop and discuss that how we can find out the answer for this particular question. Let us go to the TallyTop in order to find out the answer of this particular question. Okay. Now the structure of glucose is already given. This is the structure: CHO, COH, H, C, HO, H, C, OH, H, C, OH, H, and CH2OH. Okay. Now this is the structure which has been already given to you, and you need to find out that out of these 4 different options, which option is incorrect. You have to find out the incorrect statement. Now again let us look at the structure which we have drawn just now. Now if we look at, okay, here OH is over here, here H only. Now the first statement is that it is the L form of glucose. Now if we look at the structure, if we look at the penultimate carbon, that is the carbon number 5th, where the hydroxyl group is present, the hydroxyl group is present on the left side of the penultimate carbon, and that's why the first option, that this is the L form of glucose, is correct. This is the correct option. Why? Because the hydroxyl group is present on the left hand side of the penultimate carbon, and that's why this option is correct. The second option is that it is an aldose. Obviously glucose is a aldohexose. Why it is aldose? Because it has aldehyde group. If you look at the structure of the glucose, on the top we have the CHO group, that is the aldehyde group. So that's why the glucose is a aldohexose. So that is also a correct statement. The option C is that it contains 4 different chiral carbon. Now what do we mean by chiral carbon? Chiral carbon means asymmetric carbon. For suppose you have one carbon and all the 4 different valencies of carbon are being filled by 4 different functional group, then this carbon is considered to be as a chiral carbon. Now if you look at the structure of the glucose, the carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4 and carbon number 5. Carbon number 2, carbon number 3, carbon number 4 and carbon number 5. These are the chiral carbon. Why they are chiral carbon? Why they are asymmetric carbon? Because all the 4 valencies of carbon number 2, 3, 4 and 5, it is being occupied by the different functional groups. Now as far as the stereoisomers of any molecule is concerned, that will depend upon that how many chiral carbon or how many asymmetric carbon it contains. Now if we look at the option C, which tells that it contains 4 chiral carbon, then this statement is correct because glucose has 4 chiral carbon, 2, 3, 4 and 5. But if we look at the last option D, which says that it gives 20 different stereoisomer, that statement D is wrong. Why? Because if the glucose contains 4 chiral carbon, in that case, if we follow the formula of 2 raised to n, where n is equal to the number of chiral carbons, then we have 2 raised to 4, that is equal to 60 different stereoisomers. Then we should have 16 different stereoisomers. But your option D says that it gives 20 different stereoisomers, which is an incorrect statement. If the glucose has 4 different chiral carbons, and if we look at the formula of 2 raised to n, which is generally used to find out the number of stereoisomers for particular molecule, where n is the number of chiral carbon, then the number of stereoisomers comes to 16. So it contains 16 different stereoisomers and not the 20. Now let us go to the slide. Not the 20. So it gives 20 different stereoisomers is the incorrect statement. It gives only 16 different stereoisomers. So the correct answer is D. See, sometime in the competitive examination, when it is being asked that find out the incorrect statement, then you have to be very careful. And when you are going to find out the correct option, you write down true and false before all the option, and accordingly you come to the conclusion. So here the question is not what is the correct statement. There are 3 correct statements are given as far as the structure of the glucose is concerned. But we have been asked to find out what is the incorrect statement. The same question can be twisted further, and they can ask you that which of the following statement for the above structure of the glucose is correct except. So when there is a except, then or when which of the following statement is not correct with respect to the structure of glucose which has been shown in the above figure, in that case before each option you write down true or false, and accordingly you jump to the final conclusion and you write down the correct answer. The next question, let us go to the next question. It has been mentioned here that when 0.300 gram of glucose is dissolved in 15 ml of distilled water and placed in 10 centimeter polarimeter tube, the observed rotation at 20 degrees centigrade using D line, that is the sodium lamp, is minus 0.630 degree. Calculate the specific rotation of the glucose. Now when we have discussed that the glucose has 4 different chiral carbons, and that's why it has the ability to rotate the plane polarized light. The data suggests that it rotates the plane polarized light to left because minus sign is there, and optical rotation is also given. Now let us go to the tabletop in order to find out the solution of this problem. Okay. Alpha, that is your optical rotation, the data has been given, that is at 20 degrees centigrade using D lamp. Now if you look at the formula, it is your specific rotation which we need to find out. So for that we have the optical rotation into upon C into L, where C is what is now what this alpha d by 20 indicates. This indicates specific rotation which we want to find out. This alpha indicates observed rotation. C indicates concentration in gram per ml, gram per milliliter, and this L indicates path length, that is your thickness of the layer which you are going to put into the polarimeter. Now all these different values are already provided. What you need to do is you need to remember this particular formula. So if we put the different values, that is minus 0.630 divided by 0.3 upon 15. Why upon 15? Because we want to convert this into gram per ml into the path length, that is 10 centimeter. And if we solve this equation, we will come to the answer, that is minus 31.5 degree. So it will, the specific rotation will be minus 31.5 degree. We know that when any plane polarized light will pass through the solution containing asymmetric carbon, it can either rotate the light to the left or it can rotate the light to the right. So here the specific rotation for this particular glucose concentration is minus 31.5. Let us go to the next question. Suppose answer is minus 31.5. This we have discussed. Now suppose the glycogen molecule with 8000 glucose residues, and if the branch occur at every 8 residues, how many reducing end does the molecule have? Now we know that glycogen is a polymer of the glucose and it is having 8000 glucose molecule. Now here generally there are two different kind of linkages which are being observed. One is the alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkage and alpha 1,6 glycosidic linkage. That is what we observed in starch also. But the basic difference between the starch and glycogen is with respect to the extent of branching. The glycogen has extensive branching as compared to that of the starch. So if we look at the question that there are 8000 glucose molecule and if branching occur at every 8 residue, it means we can say that there will be 100 different branches in the glycogen molecule. 8000 divide 8000 at every 8 residue, so 8000 divided by 8, so we can say that after every 1000 glucose molecule which are linear, which are having alpha 1,4 glycosidic linkage, we will have the branching. So there will be 1000 different branching which will be there in this glycogen molecule, but at branch point there will be no reducing end. Even the glucose is joined together by the alpha 1,4 linkage, there will be no reducing end. So there will be only one reducing end even after branching at every 8 residue. So here the correct answer will be A, that is only one reducing end will be there. So friends, here we have discussed what are the basic aspects of molecular interactions relevant to biology, and we have discussed few model questions related to the molecular interactions relevant to biology. In the next session, we will discuss some more model questions from the proteins, from the nucleic acid, from the vitamins, from the reaction kinetics, from the buffers, pH, Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, etc. So this is the end of the session 1, and in session 2 we will be discussing about some more model questions relevant to the same topic. Thank you very much.